well, the show and the match specifically that made me a wrestling fan, which is behind me there, August 29th, 1992, SummerSlam, Wembley Stadium. That was what got me hooked 30 odd years ago. The absolute clinic put on by your brother Bret and brother-in-law, British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith. Now that match, still 30 odd years old, holds a very special place in many fans' hearts. And of course, it was kind of built around this very realistic for a time storyline, this family turmoil of a family imploding around your sister Diana being caught in the middle. What are your memories of that match and all the lead up to it, and also why it's so beloved 3 decades on?
Yeah, just an incredible match. And even though Bret and Davey had previously wrestled, in the Hart Foundation British Bulldogs feud, right, and had some matches on Stampede before that, and had been tag team partners as well. And it was very well known they were brother-in-laws. That Davey had married Bret's sister. The WWF really played well, on that storyline, and it was just such a natural storyline. It didn't need a lot of drama. They didn't need any abductions or blackmailing or anything like that. Some of these very contrived storylines they've had over the years with wrestling. This was just kind of an internal family battle, for the Intercontinental title, and Diana being kind of caught in the middle, like you said, between Bret and Davey. And it was a great intrigue about it. And Davey had never won the singles title before. He had been successful in the tag team wars. Now he's breaking out as the British Bulldog as a individual star. So and it was a classic baby face match. Bret was a baby face, Davey was a baby face. And to have it in Wembley, England, it's like Davey's backyard, perfect location, and then, they had like nearly 70,000 fans live at the show, and, and they let them wrestle, I think the match was over 30 minutes, and, just a classic match. And Davey had overcome a staph infection, and he'd been out of action for a month prior to the match, and there was some doubt whether he'd even be ready to perform, and he and Bret didn't even have much time to meet, get together and put the match together, but they did, I think, really just on the day of the show. And then I think Bret basically knew how to lay the whole match out. And for Davey, just because there was some ring rust and he hadn't been in the ring for over a month, he was very worried. I think even in the first minute, he was already running out of breath, and Bret just, calmed him down and said, we're going to be okay. Just follow my lead, and it was just a tremendous match, back and forth. And, it was a testament to both their working abilities, that they put on such a flawless match. Incredible finish, Davey sat out Bret's victory roll and got the victory, and the people loved it. And, Davey was crowned as a new champion. And it actually helped Bret. I think Bret came across as someone who was initially disappointed and upset at losing a high stakes match, and then when he and Davey and Diana embraced at the end of the match, it was just one of those great moments in wrestling, and it was great for both their careers. It really was, and it's definitely my most memorable SummerSlam match, maybe pay-per-view match of any that I've seen. It was just such a classic match, and did so much for both their careers.
Where did you watch it?
I think I watched it maybe at I don't remember now. I think it was at one of my sister's houses. We ordered it on pay-per-view and watched it live, and we had no idea how the match was going to go, ourselves. I had a feeling maybe Davey might be winning the title. It just seemed like the time was right. So we had no idea what the outcome was going to be or anything, and it was just a perfectly laid out match, and so we were able to enjoy it just like other fans, and we usually watched a lot of the pay-per-views from one of our sisters or families' homes, when Diana was in the city, because she and Davey had been living in Florida for the most part. But, when we were together in Calgary, we would always watch it from someone's home, and it was kind of nice. Sometimes we'd go to a bar or a theater, but we really like to just be with our family members to watch the shows and enjoy it ourselves. So yeah, and it was great to see that match unfold, and definitely one of my favorite memories.
How was it for Diana being involved in being really immersed in a WWF storyline?
I think interesting. Diana was very modest, very quiet, but she was used very well in that storyline. She handled it really well. I mean, she was a beautiful girl, but there was nothing that was pretentious or sleazy about her role. Nothing over dramatic. And then they kind of did a storyline with her later with Shawn Michaels, and it appeared like she was Shawn was coming on to her or something. And I didn't think that was very well done. I thought that was kind of exploitative, and it ruffled some feathers in my family. My dad wasn't very happy with that, but Diana actually was a good performer. She could play a number of roles well, but she just seemed to be a wife and sister-in-law caught, in the middle there, and her emotions and expressions I thought were perfect. Like in her own right, she showed she could be a really good performer.
I think if you take Diana away from that equation, it's a very different match. I think it's such an iconic scene at the end of SummerSlam, the three of them in the ring, arms raised, fireworks going. But without that family dynamic, I don't think it would have been the same.
No, it wouldn't have been the same at all. No, and it was kind of that human touch, and then at the end, it was just they all played it so well. Bret was initially dejected after losing the match and the title, and the fans were going crazy because Davey won, and then there was that little awkwardness, that tension at the end, and then they all kind of put their differences aside and embraced each other in the ring, and it would be kind of similar to seeing two brothers competing against each other in a Super Bowl or something, but when you add the third element, that female element, it makes it even more touching.
And you mentioned Shawn Michaels, though. I believe the original plan, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the original plan was that it was supposed to be Bret versus Shawn Michaels for the championship, with Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man doing the classic big man or main event at that show, and that Bret convinced Vince McMahon that actually they should be the main event, that it should be A versus a Bulldog in London after they changed the venue, but also B that they should be the main event because no one else could follow them. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not sure if Shawn was the original opponent scheduled to face Bret or not, but I know Bret really advocated for Davey, and said this is the right time for Davey. And Bret was well established as Intercontinental Champion, and he had really made that nice transition from tag team to singles wrestling. And he was the most over babyface in the promotion at the time. There was nobody more popular than Bret, and so I think
and that was always the case on UK tours. Just as someone who went to many UK tours and was a huge fan of your brother growing up. I mean, the Bret Hitman Hart reaction, there was something about his connection with the crowd which was unlike anyone else on the card. It was like a rock star coming to the venue. It was very different to everyone else, and that never changed throughout his career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it was just the perfect time and place, and and Bret was absolutely right. Like. Nothing else could have followed their match, right? And it was fitting that Davey wrestle in his home country in the last match of the show. It should have been the final match, and it wouldn't have it wouldn't have been as well received if it had just been preceding the Warriors and Savages match, which wasn't that great anyway. It was pretty limited, even with all the outside elements there with sensational Sherry and Elizabeth and everything. It really made sense to put Bret and Davey's match on last and give them as much time as they needed, because it went about 30 minutes, I think, and it was just a classic layout, and it went perfectly. And and again, it helped Bret a lot, because in in dropping that title as gracefully as he did, and showing some sportsmanship and kind of reconciling with Davey and Diana, at the end of the show. He got a lot of empathy, and then a month later, they put the world title on him. They had him beat Ric Flair in Saskatoon here, and so it actually elevated Bret's position. Made him an even stronger star. Yeah. So sometimes in losing, you can become stronger, and it was a win-win situation for both Bret and Davey.
And in a very surprising way, he became WWF champion very quickly at essentially an untelevised house show that was straight to video, but in Canada, in Saskatoon, in front of a crowd that really, very strange, but a crowd that really understood. I don't think anyone quite understood what was happening in the moment that a title change had happened.
No, really odd, and I think it was there was obviously some urgency in having Ric Flair drop the title. I guess they didn't have him in their long-term plans after all, and then they decided they had to have him drop it, to someone right away. And at the time, Warrior was leaving, and Davey unfortunately left shortly after that, over the steroid scandal, I guess. So it made sense, that Bret was the right guy, even though he just dropped the Intercontinental title. And so they didn't even schedule it for a pay-per-view match or build up a title match with him and Flair. They just had him beat Flair in Saskatoon, and and they filmed it, but it really wasn't a televised match, and totally different from what you see today. So, and Bret was certainly ready for the role, and he had a really good following in North America, but especially in Europe, in the UK and Germany. His merchandise was outselling everybody's there, and he was a huge drawing card in all those places. And so while the North American market had dropped somewhat for live shows, after Hulkamania and the Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior periods were over, and there was a bit of a drop in business, a decline in the industry in North America. It was just huge in Europe, and a lot of that was because of Bret's popularity.
Yeah, and I believe that was part of the rationale for why SummerSlam came over to the UK in the first place. Was it originally a US venue was swapped for the UK, and what a great move that was, because I think wrestling was huge in mid 1992, and it was just the perfect moment, I think, in terms of pop culture